Jinshi, the Magistrate, is a top tier DPS with almost no drawbacks as long as you can get her forte stacks. But how do you get these stacks? Well, I'm glad you asked, because in this video, I'll explain how to build and use our Magistrate, Jinshi.
Heaven ordains. Banish all vice.
Jinshi's main damage type is resonant skill damage, which is about 75% of our damage. And whilst most of her damage scalings are behind her forte circuit, all of them count as resonant skill damage. Jinshi's forte circuit bar is divided into 50 parts. Each counts as one stack of incandescence, but let's just make it easy and call them stacks. Now, let's find out how she gains these stacks. When someone on the team deals damage, she gains one stack, with each element having its own independent cooldown of 3 seconds. The same counts for coordinated attacks. She gains 2 stacks per coordinated attack, with each element having its own cooldown of 3 seconds again. But when Jinshi uses her auto skill, these cooldowns all get reduced by 2 seconds. So, using her auto skill is crucial to do the big dragon nuke every rotation. As you can see here, after I use Jinshi's auto and Yinlin's forte circuit, Jinshi's forte bar fills up very quickly. Now for her resonant skill, or should I say resonant skills. This is because Jinshi has 4 resonant skills. Skill 1 is a simple dash forward, dealing a bit of spectral damage. Her second skill, which you can unlock by using either her basic attack 4 or her intro skill, will make her dash forward, dealing a bit of damage, whilst also gaining Incarnation mode. This mode lets Jinshi float, whilst also transforming her basic attack, skill and dodge counter. Whilst you are in this mode, you can use her 4 basic attacks, which will activate Ordination Glow. This lasts for 5 seconds and gives you access to her skill 4, the Dragon Nuke. This nuke deals up to 2574% damage, depending on how much forte you have. After using her Dragon Nuke, Jinshi will gain Unison, which is just a complicated way of saying she gets a free auto skill. As you might have noticed, I skipped her third skill. Well, this is because it is a completely optional skill that is usable after entering her Incarnation mode. It's a dash forward dealing pretty decent damage, but you will have to use it before her 4th basic attack, otherwise it will transform into her Dragon Nuke. As for the last part of her Incarnation mode, she cannot reset her basic attack string. This means you can use the basic attack 2, dash around a bit and still continue using her 3rd basic attack right after. And finally,
Heaven ordains. Banish all vice.
we have her Resonance Liberation, Purge of Sky. Luckily, this isn't as complicated as her forte, since this is just a 2-hit nuke, dealing a total of 1666 attack. It does have a very big 150 energy requirement, so you will probably use this every other rotation. As for her inherent skills, she gets a couple buffs. The first one gives Jinshi 20% spectro damage bonus. That's it, not much to talk about here. As for her second, it gives her intro skill a 50% multiplier increase. Pretty simple. As for her leveling recommendations, I recommend you level her forte circuit with utmost priority. Once you have completed leveling her forte, you should level her Resonance Liberation, followed by her skill, her intro, and finally her basic attacks.
向かってくるのか。逃げずにこのディオに近づいてくるのか。
Jinshi is pretty special, and her weapons definitely reflect that. Let's start off with her signature weapon, the Aegis of Harvest. This will be her best in slot, giving lots of resonant skill damage, and because of that, I recommend using one attack free cost echo. This way, you won't stack up on too many multiplier bonuses, whilst making your Jinshi deal by 3% more damage. We will baseline this weapon at 100%. The next 2 weapons are also 5-star weapons, but don't worry, because after that I still have 3 4-star weapons incoming. The second 5-star weapon is the Verdant Summit, Gion signature. Even though the 48% heavy attack damage bonus doesn't do anything for Jinshi, The pure stats this weapon gives are enough for this weapon to be the second best for Jinshi. And even though it's still far behind her signature weapon with a rating of 86.8%, it is a great option. And the last 5-star weapon we will be talking about is the standard Broadblade. Unfortunately, it has attack percent as its substat, but luckily, the passive isn't too useless. Jinshi uses 3 resonance skills. 1 to enter her enhanced state, 1 in her state, and 1 for the dragon nuke. And even though you will only be able to use your liberation once every 2 rotations, it still makes for a good damage buff and a stat stick. This weapon has a rating of 81.8%, which is slightly behind Giant's signature. Now for her 4-star weapons, I'm going to say right off the bat, these weapons will be significantly weaker than her signature, or even the other 5-star options. So I recommend that if you want to main Jinshi, that you get her signature weapon. Up first, we have the Helios Cleaver. The Helios Cleaver gives her stacking attack after using her resonance skill, which is great for Jinshi. Sadly, and this is for all the 4-star Broadblades I'm gonna recommend, they only have 412 base attack, which is decent, but with Jinshi's big damage scalings you generally want a high attack. Luckily, this weapon can give a total of 54.3% attack, so you will still have your high attack, you just sacrifice the substats for it compared to the 5-star weapons. This weapon has a rating of 70.8%. Second up for the 4-star weapons is the Autumn Trace. This Battle Pass weapon has 20.2% crit rate, which is nice, but using the passive can be quite tricky. It increases your attack when you deal basic or heavy attack damage. This stacks for 5 times. So your rotation will be a bit different than usual. After using your intro skill, you have to do 1 basic attack, cancel into basic attack 4, before you can use your skill to get the maximum efficiency. But if you do this, you will have a weapon with a 68.1% power scaling. And finally, we have the Broadblade 41. Not much to say about this. If you don't have any other options, use this one. It has a bit of energy recharge, a bit of attack percent above 80% HP, and a little bit of healing below that. Overall, this weapon lacks a little bit of everything. The power rating of this weapon will be 67%. And finally, here's the TLDR if you didn't want to listen to all of that yapping.
Together we fight.
As for the echo sets, Jinshi has one she always wants to use, and that is none other than the Celestial Light set. The set gives a base 10% spectral damage bonus, and with an extra 30% after using an intro skill, which she will always want to use. Beside the set buff, Jinshi has a choice of 2 different forecast echoes, the Morning X and Jue. Obviously, the tailor-made echo, Jue, is the best choice for Jinshi. When you use Jue, you summon him, dealing a bit of damage whilst also giving you 2 effects for 15 seconds. First, you get 16% skill damage bonus. Pretty simple. But for the second effect, when you hit a resonance skill on the enemy, every second for 15 seconds, Jue will deal spectral damage on the enemy. And after my testing, I found out that this is not coordinated attack damage. So Farina is still a viable option. Overall, Jue is a lot better than the 12% spectral and liberation damage bonus you get from the Morning Axe. For your rotations, you will see an about 20% damage buff compared to the 4.6% the Morning Axe gives. This is mainly because Jinshi will be able to get her forte stacks way faster with Jue. As for the main stats on these echoes, you will want crit damage on the 4 cost, with 1 attack and 1 spectral damage on the 3 costs. It will be slightly better than the double spectral, since Jinshi already has a lot of scalings, if you have her signature weapon. But if you're not using her signature, or if you're using an attack percent substat weapon, it is recommended to use double spectral echoes. And finally, you want double attack for your 1 cost echoes. For substats, you're mainly looking at crit rate, crit damage, attack percent, and resonance skill damage. But if you get energy recharge, it's a nice treat because of her high energy requirement.
Victory, guide my blade.
Jinshi wants to have at least 1 coordinated attacker on her team, and luckily there are multiple options, expensive and completely free. The first and best option is Zushi. Zushi has a lot of uptime on her coordinated attacks if you have proficient energy recharge. This is because her coordinated attacks all come from her resonance liberation. And besides this, she also amplifies resonance skill damage, which is great for Jinshi. The second option is Yinlin. Yinlin also has really consistent uptime on her coordinated attacks from her forte circuits, but her outro just makes Jinshi's liberation deal more damage. As a great alternative, if you don't have or can't use Sushi or Yinlin, Yanwu is a great option. Let's start off by the positives. He is completely free. Everyone gets him after clearing the easiest part of the Tower of Adversity. So, accessibility is no problem. He also has really good uptime on his coordinated attack pillar, and by getting his inherent skills, he will increase the range of the pillar as well as summoning a pillar when he leaves the field if his forte bar isn't full. Now, sadly, he does have some negatives. First, his pillar is, well, a pillar. Unlike Zuji, who just attacks the enemy if you attack, or Yinlin, who marks the enemy, Yanwu's pillar needs to be in the right position. And this flaw becomes very noticeable with bosses that move around a lot. The second is that his auto skill isn't great. It reduces an extra 10% vibration bar of the enemy, so unlike Zeshi or Yinlin, he doesn't really have any good damage buffs. And finally, his damage is pretty low. That's all there is to say about it. So you want to swap off of him as soon as possible. And for the last pick, which I don't really recommend if you have one of the upper characters, is Taochi. Taochi is a sub DPS that gives 38% resonance skill damage bonus. So she will give you the biggest dragon nuke you can get, and even though that sounds nice, her lack of coordinated attacks and her conservator buildup are a problem. You could use her as a second DPS, but I will have to do more in-depth testing on Taochi, which I will do over the next couple weeks. As for your healer, you can use all three of them. Shorekeeper does not have coordinated attacks, so there will be a conflict between her and the Jewel Echo, but her crit buffs make Shorekeeper a worthwhile investment. And if you reach the maximum forte stacks on Jinshi after every rotation, I would really recommend you to use the Shorekeeper as your healer. As for Farina, her liberation counts as coordinated attacks, so she's pretty good with Jinshi. And if you want to use Taochi, Farina can help a lot with the stack build-up for Jinshi. Of course, Farina also has her share of damage buffs as well as access to the rejuvenating glow set, so she is no doubt great for Jinshi. However, if you don't have or can't use Shorekeeper or Farina, Baiji is a great option. She has healing, an attack buff, and coordinated attacks. Once you use Baiji's liberation, she shoots out coordinated attacks every 2.5 seconds for a total of 4 times, unless you have her sequence 4. Her sequence 4 buffs Baiji's liberation. She gains 2 extra coordinated attacks, as well as more damage and healing. But this isn't the Baiji guide, so let's get back to the Jinshi guide. Whilst I was editing, I seem to have forgotten a Jinshi team. This is Jinshi with a second DPS. This could be Jian, Encore or Zhang Liao for example, since they all have long animations. Jian has his Dragon Spear stance, where he has his heavy attacks that take a while. Encore has a resonance skill and heavy attack, which take a while to cast. And Zhang Liao has his resonance skill in his ultimate or his enhanced resonance skill in his ultimate, which all take a very long time. It is recommended to use Farina with her coordinated attacks, or if you can't use Farina, use Baiji. But I do have to warn you, Jinshi will deal less damage, but the overall damage of the entire team is more overall. It is quick swap, so it is a little bit more skill, but if this seems like something fun and challenging to you, go ahead, you will do the most damage available in your team. It's just really challenging, and definitely if you're playing on mobile. That was all, so let's get back to the video. Overall, if you want the best team, this is what it will look like. However, if you're only halfway with your coordinated attacks each time you use your Dragon Nuke, I would recommend this team. Of course, you can always swap them out with other units I recommended, if you like them more for example, or if the stronger units are not available.
Evil be cleansed.
And finally, her sequences. These are all very long, so I'll shorten them up for you as much as I can. Let's start off at sequence 1. When Jinshi uses her enhanced attacks, she will get a stack with a limit of 4 stacks. Each stack increases her damage of her Dragon Nuke by 20% and disappears when she uses her Dragon Nuke. This is a pretty decent sequence and will buff your Jinshi by about 10.2%. As for her second sequence, after 4 seconds of your entire team not being in combat, Jinshi will recharge all of her forte stacks. This is pretty good as front-loaded damage, but the longer the fight goes on, the less good it becomes. Making an estimate, I would say it buffs Jinshi by about 8.4%. And now, we have arrived at the first stopping point. If you're going for sequences, I recommend saving until you can get sequence 3. When Jinshi uses her intro skill, she increases her attack by 25%, stacking up to 2 times, with the buff lasting for 20 seconds. This is really good, and when you use an intro skill whilst already having a stack on, let's say 2 seconds left, the timer will reset back to 20, so keeping this buff up is not that hard. The sequence is really good and buffs Jinshi by about 21.2%. Everybody has a weaker sequence, and for Jinshi, this is sequence 4. After using your Dragon Nuke or Liberation, increase the whole party's attribute damage bonus by 20% for 20 seconds. It's a nice buff for the entire team, not much to say about it, and it'll increase Jinshi's damage by about 5%. We have arrived at the second to last sequence, sequence 5. The damage multiplier of her Liberation is increased by 120%. After researching a bit, the math for this, from what I found, is actually her Liberation percent times 2.2. So it's pretty decent, giving you about 13.9% damage buff. And finally, for all the whales or savers, Jinshi's sequence 6. Her Dragon Nuke damage is increased by 45%, and each stack multiplier is increased by 45% as well. As expected of an S6, this is a crazy good buff, buffing her by about 22.5%. I would recommend as your second stopping point, since if you're going past S3, this will be the next big thing. Personally, I'm a big fan of Jinshi's design and animations. I just find myself using Jian, Zhangliao and Dungeon more. But she is still a top tier DPS. Thank you all so much for watching. Could I recommend this video on the screen right now? I appreciate you all. Bye bye.